Discover Help presents Stress-Free Living with Ray Samich and Mr. Stress-Free Ratanjit S. Sandhi. This audio program is an unscripted and unrehearsed conversation between Ray and Ratanjit. It is shared with you in hope of adding value to your life. We encourage you to listen to this program in its entirety to receive the full impact of its message. Sit back, relax, open your heart, mind, and soul to this edition of Stress-Free Living.
This is Stress-Free Living. I'm Ray Samich. Thank you so much for being with us today. And I'd like to introduce you to my longtime colleague on the radio and, more importantly, in life, my spiritual brother, Ratanjit Sandhi. Ratanjit, how are you today?
Wonderful, Ray. How are you?
Excellent. Thank you. These days together are as good as it gets in this lifetime. So thank you for being with us. And we welcome our audiences, however you're joining us. So many people join us on the radio locally, on the internet, streaming, and most recently, for the last year or two, on our YouTube channel, which you can't listen to that live, but you can catch that after the program when we put it up there 24/7. About 100 programs are there for you to enjoy for yourself and to share with others who may be in need of some thoughts, different ways of thinking than we normally do about our everyday life. Ratanjit coined a term called applied spirituality a number of years ago, taking the spiritual ideas and applying them to real everyday life problems. Ratanjit, one of our Zoom guests last week suggested that we do a show about purpose. And we've done that before. We've done the purpose of our life. One of our ongoing themes, your biggest theme, is that our purpose is to add the highest value. So we kind of understand our purpose and we can do more on that. But more specifically, the question was asked, do we all have a unique purpose? And if we do, how do we discover that? How do we know ultimately why we are here, what we are supposed to accomplish in our lifetime? Do you think there's billions of people right now, and there have been, hundreds of billions of people that have lived throughout history. Is it really reasonable to think that every single person ever born has a unique purpose in life?
Basically, Ray, nature has never duplicated anything. If you look at the leaves of a tree, they are different sizes, they're different. And similarly, the human beings, all those 8 billions which exist today, everyone is unique. Twins who are absolutely look-alike, and they are different. So everyone is unique. Mm-hmm. So when you say that our purpose is unique, it has a validity. But you mentioned something that we did a show on our purpose, and we said our purpose is to add the highest value. So if you only focus on adding the highest value without understanding who you are, adding the highest value basically comes out of your ego. Oh, I'm adding the highest value. You start comparing. You are not able to add the real highest value until you understand who are you. So fundamentally, initially, once you realize who you are, your uniqueness has a purpose. And you begin to understand your basic mission of life, your basic purpose of life. So, you have any comments?
Yes, always. I agree we should start with understanding who we are. And our regular listeners, it'll be they'll repeat hearing it. It will be maybe redundant to them because we always talk about that, who we really are. But it also, I think, needs to be accentuated over and over and over again. So it sometimes gets it through my thick skull. So I remember, because when I turn off the show and I go out into the real world, it's really easy to forget who I really am. It's so much easier in the world that we live every day to think of ourselves as a human being with our titles and our responsibilities, and forgetting that we are a spiritual being having a human experience. So that's a good place to start, and I agree with you. But I'm still curious when you say a minute ago that when we know who we really are, that's when we know our purpose. Because I still don't understand the differentiator. I still don't understand what is my unique purpose, even as the real me, compared to your real purpose, compared to our other people that we're watching here on our Zoom call. I don't understand that part. So I'm anxious to get to that part, but I agree with you that let's start with, again, an understanding of who we really are, maybe for our first time listeners and viewers, so that step is understood first.
If you look from the standpoint of organized religions, when you ask this question through the angle of organized religions, what is your purpose? So typically, a religious purpose is to find God. Or purpose of life is to find God. And what we are doing, unfortunately, not going into understanding of how we are created, how nature is created, and we look for God outside of us. Understanding that when we consider us and God to be different, I worship God, I pray to God, basically, neither you remain nor God remains. So basically, you have to understand where the real supreme power, the universal force, which we call God, lies. So when we look at this human body basically is made out of the elements of this earth. So each element has no life in it. So when you combine all these elements together, construct this body, where does the life comes in it? Because the elements don't have life. So anything made out of the element of this earth, how can it have life? Because life comes first in the human being, in the womb of mother, and around which this life then accumulates the worldly elements to construct this human body. So what comes first is the life in this human body. And this life in the human body is the divine force. We give this example to understand this, like this light bulb. When it is off, it does not produce light. When you turn it on, it lights up. So it becomes alive. At that moment when it is alive, it is directly connected to the powerhouse which provides electricity or the power to the bulb. So it has a live wire connection to that power.
Right.
Similarly, when you and I are alive, the power in us which brings life in us has a direct connection to a single power, universal power, which we can call God if we want. And that power is what resides in this human body. So once it's the knowledge itself is not enough. You have to feel and live that power within us. When you begin to live and feel the power in us, then automatically your motivation of uniqueness, which is gifted to us in this form, you have unique skills, you have unique power, you have unique outlook, and those uniqueness are utilized to serve this power in you and all who are around you. So basically serving that divine power in you and others is, I call it, adding the highest value, because you serve them until you add the highest value. It is not service. It is your perspective. So you have to comprehend, you have to have empathy, you have to have understanding, you have to have basically a recognition of what is going to add the highest value at that moment, at that time, to the other part of this universal energy which exists in other human beings. So basically, that is the core of this thing. So if we can go further and explain. Before I do that, I need some more feedback from you.
Okay, so I kind of differentiated understanding who we are and then understanding the purpose once we can do that. You've already started bridging that, I think, when you used the phrase, you said, it isn't enough to know who we really are. We have to feel it and live it, is how you just voiced that a couple of seconds ago. That's the difference that I don't know if we have talked about that in all of the shows that we've done. We've talked about you have to know who you are. You have to know who you are. But I don't know if you've ever said we have to feel who we are and live who we really are. And I think that's a unique differentiation. Okay, so let's assume for this show, because we have so many other, and for our audiences that maybe still don't grasp who we really are, although you again laid it out so well with the analogy of the power from the light source giving power to not only a light bulb, but anything that's electric, suddenly turning the fan on, suddenly turning the appliance on so you can use it. You need power from a central source to be able to activate anything. That's a wonderful analogy that says there has to be a power coming in us that keeps us alive. So it's beautiful. If people need more on that, we have so many shows. Please go back and catch that in more depth. So let's move on from that to get into what you just said. How do we feel? How do we take that escalation instead of just knowing and accepting, okay, I am a spiritual being having a human experience. The real me is within me. It's the power within me. And maybe we do take a quick break first, because I think the answer is going to be long. When we come back from our first break, Ratanjit, how do we advance from knowing who we really are to actually living who we really are? I'll give you just a little bit of time to think about it. We're going to be right back. This is Stress-Free Living. We're so glad you're with us here today. We'll be back in just a moment.
Okay.
All right. We're open for your input. If anybody has a thought while we were on a short commercial break.
Just a very quick input with your kind permission.
Yes.
Yesterday, I went and watched this beautiful movie called Oppenheimer. So it was basically about the father of atom bomb, who created it, Oppenheimer. And very beautifully, he has said in the movie that my purpose was to live the theory, to develop the theory into something which leads to creativity. But I didn't know where it slipped out of my hands and it was used for mass destruction. So maybe this also reflects that while we are so engaged in our purpose of life, one should always step back and see whether it's really going to be value adding or it's going to subtract value enormously.
Very good point.
Very good. I will come back at the end of the show and come back to that point. That's really good.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Mhm. Any other quick thoughts from anybody?
Ravi, it didn't make any sense. Nobody is giving us feedback.
Maybe they're sleeping. We could promote this as putting people to sleep, Ratanjit. Better than medication, better than sleeping pills.
Well, that's fine. That's fine. No problem.
Dr. Jakshi is still with us. Okay, we're coming back. Welcome back to Stress Free Living. Ratanjit Sandhi and yours truly, Ray Samich, with you. We're grateful that you are with us here today. We hope that we're going to be adding value in your life. And Ratanjit, I gave you some time to think about answering this question. How do we advance? It's big enough. It is a huge deal for us to understand, to realize, to know that who we are is a lot more than our titles, than our personality, than our bodies. There's a real us that is a spiritual being connected to the divine power. So it's overwhelming to know that, to realize that. How do we take that now and live it? What does that mean to jump to that point?
You're typically, when I've seen in my seminars and lectures, and when this topic arises, so one biggest question which is raised by most of people is, how do you convey to others? How do I have this thing practiced by my children? So you automatically become a center of this knowledge, and you want to distribute this knowledge to your children, to your fellow, and you are asking, how do you distribute, how do you convince others about this knowledge? Because this is the irony of knowledge. We never practice our knowledge. We talked about it, we lecture about it. Whenever we are convinced about a knowledge, we take books and read more about it. We become expert, and we have seminars and those things. But we never live our knowledge. What we live are our habits. So until this knowledge is converted into living habits, this never is going to happen to us. Habit forming is done by a special part of our brain, which is called basal ganglia, which is basically a gift to us to make our life more efficient. What we do repeatedly gets caught by this part of the brain, and without utilizing your other brain power of thinking or critical thinking, it automatically happens. So habits you live without knowing because you practice these habits. Basically, as you know, when you drive a car, you come from your home and go to your place of work without knowing that you reach. Your mind is preoccupied by something else. So you never utilize your mind to drive. Your habit drives it. And again, to develop a skill, you have to initially, when you develop it, it looks very difficult. When you do it repeatedly, it forms into a habit. And many of these workers who are working on these mills and all these things, they do routine work and their mind is somewhere else.
Mhm.
But they produce everything systematically, correctly, again and again and again. So this is all because of this gift of basal ganglia, which is making us efficient in developing a habit so that we can produce something without thinking. So until we park this knowledge and develop this knowledge into a habit of living in this mode of constantly being aware of this divine power within us, we will not be able to live. And this thought of adding the highest value is always going to be controlled by the egoic human body, not by the power in you. So no matter how hard you try, you will never be able to add the highest value, which does not have other consequences. So you are constantly subtracting the value at the same time you are adding the value. If you are operated by the ego mode, the ego mode is mode operating in the body mode, human body mode. Human body mode, human body knows inherently that it is going to one day self-die. It is experiences pain. It needs hunger. It needs food. It needs recognition. It has ego. So it is basically when the darkness is basically absence of light. You bring light, darkness disappears. Similarly, our ego is basically absence of the knowledge and operating in the habit of oneness or in the habit of divine force present in us. So that ego disappears once you begin to operate in this mode of power enlivening you, right?
So I want to try to understand what you've just, some of what you've just said, and use that, frame that to try to answer the question that I asked you. Because you went kind of all over the place there, which is beautiful, but I'm trying to capture it as an answer, if I can. When I asked you if how we advance from knowing that we are a spiritual being to actually living it, you talked about how the fact that it doesn't matter what we know is not what we do anyway. There's so many things that we know we should do. There's so much knowledge that we have within us about everything in life. And you've given great examples over and over again. And one that is really powerful is that people who are doctors, the most trained, knowledgeable, best educated people about health actually have one of the shortest lifespans of all different career paths. So what that means is the people that know the most about staying healthy and living a long time end up having the shortest time on the earth. They die young. So it proves that we don't live what we know. It's just a great proof there that it isn't the education, it isn't the knowledge that describes how we live, it's the habits that we have. So if we have a habit of smoking, if we have the habit of eating the wrong foods, if we have the habit of not taking care of our bodies properly and doing all the things we need to do, even if we have the knowledge of a doctor, we're not going to live long enough. So taking that then now with the spiritual idea, if we know that we're spiritual beings, but we don't have the habit of living in a spiritual way, then we're not ever going to find our unique purpose as that spiritual being. So you've advanced the thought, but you haven't answered us yet. Okay, it has to be a habit. It's more than the knowledge. What is the habit? What are you suggesting we form a habit about using that part of the brain that forms habits? What is the habit that we should have in order to utilize the fact that we're a spiritual being?
Habit of being aware that we are spiritual being. Habit of, there is something which happens to us we cannot live without it. You know what that is? That is breathing.
Yeah, oxygen, right?
We take the oxygen inside and take the carbon dioxide outside. We constantly breathe.
Mm-hmm.
So when you connect your mind to this exercise of breathing, every time you take the breath in, you become aware of the divinity which enlivening you. You have to connect it to something which constantly becomes a reminder, constantly becomes a thought which is empowering you on a continuous basis. So this exercise, once you develop this, you by telling that you have to remember every breath I take, you're going to not live it. So you have to sit down every morning and do this exercise of breathing so that you develop this habit. So when you breathe, you are constantly reminding yourself it is the divinity which is what is inside me and which is what is inside everyone else. So this exercise, once you continuously do it so basically this meditation, they call it meditation, breathing meditation, they concentrate on breath and all that, but they miss out the basic reason for that meditation, which is continuously making you aware of the divinity present within you. So when you connect that and do that thing very first thing in the morning, every single day, so you are sooner or later is going to form a habit of constantly thinking of you as the divinity within you, right?
Why is it taking you 30 years to tell me this, Ratanjit? This is so powerful. This is so empowering what you have just shared here, that we all know, and some of us do it with the daily meditation, and many of us do not. Some of us get into a short habit of doing it, realizing the value, and then most of us get again distracted and get out of that habit. But everybody knows who has studied breathing and meditation and yoga and all of that aspect of relaxation of the body and mind and the spiritual power of that, knows the power of breathing, knows the power of slowing everything down and taking each breath and feeling it and releasing the bads and bringing in the goods. It just calms our bodies, it calms our minds, it refreshes our life. That has been well documented, and many people are doing that every day and all throughout the day. And it's a wonderful meditation exercise for body and mind. But you've just added something extremely powerful to that. You've just added the thought process that says, if I'm hearing you, if I'm restating what I've heard from you, and I hope I am, that with that, you say, why am I breathing? Okay, how am I breathing? Where does that come from? Where is that gift of empowering of my body, of my physical being, that allows me to connect my mind, allows me to connect to my purpose? Where does that come from? It comes from the divine power. And to intertwine that in the exercise of breathing and meditation just forms that circle. It closes the circle in terms of who, what, why, how, and what I'm going to do with this. I really, really loved hearing that whole thought, because, and if you already can develop that other habit, which is so powerful anyway, in terms of our physical well-being and our mental well-being, if you now add that spiritual aspect in that habit, you've empowered a dynamo here. I mean, we really have, we've been empowered to really be the best that we can be at all levels.
Absolutely. You know, what happens is this brain, uniqueness of this brain, which is present within all of us, it is very creative. So when the brain is guided by the human body, just the human body, it is going to have within that guidance, no matter how hard we try, we would have the ingredient of fear, greed, and ego. So every creative thought is contaminated by these things. And the greatest solution this creative mind is going to offer would have those defects in it. So when this brain is guided by the divine power present within us, this brain is fed by this incentive, which is free of fear, free of greed, free of ego, free of jealousy, free of all those defects. And suddenly, the creativity produced by the brain and the guidance of the spiritual power is what has the highest value. So yes, you uniquely add the highest value based on your uniqueness, but it is empowered by the creativity of the brain, which is gifted to us, but the guidance, the boss has to be changed. Instead of the human body, we have to change the boss to be the divine power present in us, right?
So again, this is beautiful, and it all makes sense to me. I hope it's making sense to everybody else who's listening. But I lost you on that last part, okay, which is the name of the show. How do we find that unique purpose? Okay, so I hear you that this connects us, and this habit, which is very doable for all of us, to start implementing this habit, to really understand, then live it, that we are a spiritual being having a human experience. I like what you mentioned about creativity. It taps into the creativity that is well beyond anything we can think about in our human mind alone. It's an endless resource, an infinite resource, if we tap into the creativity of the universe. But I lost you from that point. If we've done that, how does that still tell us what our unique purpose is? Where does that information, that awareness come at that point? Does it come back to knowing that our human abilities? Does it limit us to how strong we are, how smart we are, how fast we run, how good we are with numbers, all those human things that we're doing in our body and our brain? Or is our purpose, is all that irrelevant? And our purpose is something far more reaching than that. And I'm going to do what I did last time, Ratanjit. I'm going to let you think about the answer, okay? Because I don't want to chop your answer off mid-sentence here. So think about that. And we're going to take our second and our final break of the program. We will be back in just a moment, and we'll get a great answer, I'm sure, from Ratanjit. Please stay with us. All right, we have 90 seconds for some input from anybody. Anyone like a question to ask?
So I think, really, when you talk about the habit formation and all of that, I guess you can start at any point in your life, but wouldn't that be easier if you started that when you were a child, or when you have children that are young, and build that up slowly up so they come up naturally into this, versus picking it up at a later point in life, or trying to pick it up later at a later point in life? Because I believe that you are always in the different phases of your life, you're chasing different things.
For certain teaching, yeah. Although it's never too late, but it would be great to start early. Love that idea.
I mean,
yes.
Yeah, it's never too late, but so to me, the practical, maybe after the show we talk about it. How do you actually practically do it? Because there are always different pulls and pushes on you at different points in your life. And so how do you step away from that, take a step back and say, okay, I know I got to do this. I know I have to do this for that. But then I have to be thinking about this, the bigger purpose.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Anybody else have anything real quickly? It's okay. If not, we're going to come back here shortly. Ratanjit, do you remember the question you were about to answer?
My mind is preoccupied.
I know. It was, I got to remember it too. It was tying into the unique purpose. Okay. Hopefully I'll remember in a second. We are back on Stress Free Living. Ray Samich, Ratanjit Sandhi with you, talking about our purpose, our unique purpose. Do we have one, and how do we know what it is? Ratanjit, we've developed this thought process pretty well today, and we've come back to the idea that we have to know that we're spiritual beings having a human experience, and then we have to live that habit. And you gave a wonderful way of doing that with breathing. Every time that we take a breath in, where did that come from? Where did that ability to breathe, that air that gives us life, come from? To recognize the divinity, to recognize that we're part of the bigger one, all connected. And to develop that habit puts us in a position to use our creativity. And so now we use our creativity. I asked you a question that says, what do we do with that? Are we limited to understand our human capabilities, our strengths and weaknesses of our human body, or does it go beyond that?
So everyone, there's two aspects of this purpose. Fundamental purpose of everyone is same, which is adding the highest value. But everyone does it in a unique way based on the gifts present in this form of our life. So each one utilizes their skills, their talent, and their uniqueness to fulfill that common purpose of adding the highest value. Now, I mentioned, I wanted to repeat that when your brain basically develops these creativity uniquely, everyone has unique capacity in the brain, and they pick up talents uniquely. They pick up certain things uniquely. So each one is a uniquely positioned to add the highest value. But it is very important that you cannot add the highest value if your creativity of mind are controlled by the human body mode. You have to be in the spiritual mode. Your mind has to be controlled by the power present within you, which is going to be free of all the contaminations associated by the human body mode. Greed, fear, ego, and all these things which will not be present when you are guided by the spiritual mode present in you. That's what I mentioned, Ray.
Yes. So I understand that has to be there. It has to be the underlying purpose. If we go back to the human mode to make those decisions on what our purpose is, we'll fall back on those fallible areas there of greed and those. So I get that. When you say what our strengths are, there's some people that say, I know I am a wonderful athlete, or I know that I am a tremendous musician. I can, whatever their skill is. I'm a mathematician. I can write words very well. Whatever the skill set that people have that they can do. Is it also? It struck me that maybe it's beyond that to also say what has happened to me in my life, what I have learned in my life, what experiences have taught me, have given me wisdom of living, what troubles I've had, what impossible situations I have been put into that I have somehow learned how to overcome. Maybe all of those experiences also have shaped me. So it isn't just my physical attributes or my mental attributes, but is it also a combination of all the things that maybe destiny has provided for me to be where I am at any point of my life? Is that a part of it too?
Basically, when you are guided by the power within you, first thing you do is begin to add value to your life itself. You live life which is much more disciplined. You start eating right, you start exercising right, you start thinking right. You begin to first add the highest value to yourself. So once you do that, you automatically are in a position to add the highest value to whoever you come across with. So in ego mode, you are constantly only limiting to what you do best. So if you confront in a highway a car which is stranded, you stop by and you find this older person whose tire has been punctured. So you are not expert at changing the tire, but at that point, the highest value is helping them to change the tire. So once you are in the ego mode, you are going to skip that. That is not my job. I am a musician. I only do this. So you maybe make a phone call or something, but you would not at that point add the highest value by changing the tire, which you may be very clumsy at. But that moment requires basically empathy for that person. You at that point, your ego, your fear of not knowing that, and your all this greed and all that goes away once you are parked in the spiritual mode, and you help them at the highest value by changing the tire. So go ahead, Ray.
That makes perfect sense. I agree, excuse me, that at that point, what our abilities are don't really matter, because in that moment, in that unique moment, we are called to do something that's way beyond our normal operations and maybe beyond our normal skill set. But I have to believe that you said that was a musician that came upon that guy and helped him change his tire, or didn't because he felt I'm a musician. That's below me. But the fact that that musician is a musician, he was blessed with incredible skills. He was blessed with the ability to play music that puts people into a different state of mind and body, and can be very empowering with the power of music. I have to believe that that skill set is there for a reason, right? That person, yes, he should change a tire for an older person if he has that problem, but basically his life probably should have something to do with the skill set of being a phenomenal musician. Am I wrong with that? I mean, aren't we obligated to use our human skills for a deeper purpose?
I know a physician, a doctor, who is extremely gifted musician, but he does not hold the concerts. He did not make music as the source of making a living. He is passionate about saving life of people.
Mm-hmm.
So all these talents you can have, but in the human body mode, these talents would be utilized to make money. In the spiritual mode, these talents would be utilized to add value. So that is the core difference. Am I making ourselves clear?
Yeah, I mean, that's a little bit eye-opening to me, because I would have thought that the best thing we can do with our physical being probably should relate to being the best thing that we can do at a spiritual level too. We just need to get it on the right path. But but it does make sense, because a lot of people have multiple abilities and they're not sure which career path to take, even as a human being, irrelevant of spiritual considerations. They can do several things well, and they don't know which path to take. So some become hobbies, some become a career. So what you've entertained is that we should be aware of those abilities, but also aware that it may be something entirely different, that our purpose may not even be connected to the apparent physical strengths and attributes.
Purpose remains the same, to add the highest value, guided by your spiritual being.
Right. Okay.
And so adding the highest value would change under the situation. In one situation, changing the tire adds the highest value. The other situation, operating on a person and saving the life based on your special skills at the highest value. And having music present in a doctor and singing the music and playing the piano or doing something for a patient, making the patient calmer, quieter as the highest value. So this could be multiple of things which adds the highest value.
Right, right. And when I mentioned destiny earlier, a few minutes ago, in terms of what has happened in our life, shaping us to be in the best position to add the highest value, that's a great example. Maybe because they are a musician, they're a little more in tune with the power of music, and music becomes part of the other process. You know, using the power of music, whether it's them performing on the guitar themselves, or whether it's just playing in the background, or whether it's prescribing that as part of their therapy to get them to feel better in that situation, or whatever it is, it still is the composite of what we've been through in life, what we've done, who we are, what we've learned, that we can then utilize for this purpose, right? For this bigger, deeper purpose of life. Do you believe, in a real simple question, that everything that's happened to us in our life is supposed to be part, and was supposed to happen so that we are in the best position to add value from our adding our human abilities and our human experiences then to the divine purpose? Does that make sense to you?
You know, when you are guided by your spiritual power, you become present. And when you become present, you are not lost in past or future. You become more observant. You become a better student of life. You pick up skills and knowledge much better than normal person. So the life experience teaches you better. Otherwise, we all go through life experiences. One remains the same, and other becomes very powerful person in their delivery and in their knowledge and in their habits, right?
I have one last question we have time for, and I'm going to take this from one of our Zoom guests who asked this question earlier. What if we do something that is really meaningful? It is intended to add the highest value. It's pure and it's loving and giving, and we feel that it is going to really make a positive difference. And for whatever reason, it doesn't. Maybe other people have sabotaged that and taken that thought or that action or that knowledge, and they have turned it into exactly the opposite. They've turned it into evil, or maybe something just has gone wrong in some way. How do we cope with that? How do we sit back and say, gee, that was meant to do the right thing, and I gave that purely and lovingly, and I see that it didn't end up with that intent? With the intent was there, but it didn't end up with that result. How can we accept that?
This is a learning process. This allows you to understand what is right and what is wrong, what should be done under certain situation. So this is used as a learning process, not as a negative thought. So obviously, all the effort, your effort remains the same. So sometimes you will succeed, sometimes you will not, depends on the circumstances. And that is why a failure is always a lesson which teaches you to understand your weaknesses and your lack of skills. And it becomes a stepping stone for successes. So failures should not be used as a negative thought. failure should be always used as a drawback in the learning process. A step back and you learn and take a step forward. So you are in the journey of adding the highest value, you are bound to make mistakes because nobody has the total knowledge. You're constantly learning, constantly acquiring skills and your mindset, but your mindset should be always there to serve the unique power present in each one of us.
Ratanjit, thank you for, as always, sharing your wonderful gifts, thoughts, wisdom, love with all of us. It has been such a pleasure talking with you today. And we appreciate all of you being there on the other sides of your radios, computers, laptops, phones, however you are watching or listening. We value and appreciate you as well. Remember, we're all playing the same game. Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon. All right, we are clear. Now's the time for your input. Please share your thoughts.
Wonderful, wonderful. It was such an energizing session. Thanks to you, Ray, for posing the right questions. It made all the sense. And of course, our maestro, Ratanjit ji. Amazing session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me answer Sandeep's question.
Yes.
So could you rephrase that question again? You remember that? Why don't we teach that to children before they you start this process at early stage? So basically what happens is when you teach this process to your children through lectures and through sit them down and making them understand, this won't work.
Mm-hmm.
Because children operate from your basically habits. They copy your habits rather than they copy your lectures. So if you have these habits as parents, you will reflect that into your children. Basically, children are operating through mirror neurons there in the brain. Mirror means they reflect. So whatever habits you have, they are being reflected in their children. So if you want to have your children follow this thought process, you live this thought process. And then you also can elaborate why you are doing this. So they would be in a much more understanding and listening position because they have seen you follow those habits.
Okay, so it's basically walk the talk.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Does it make sense to you?
Yeah. No, it does. I mean, for sure. I think the challenge, on the practical side, as I see, we come through from the time we are born, we go through all the different phases of schooling, college, and then you have all the pressures of get a job, get married, by the way, and then you start a family. So at all points in your life, almost you have competing, not competing. I won't call it competing, but you are being pulled into so many different directions. So what you really need to be doing during all of those pushes and pulls is keeping in mind, the purpose as you describe it, right? And take a step back and not just get caught up in the moment of all that you're trying to accomplish. And then, of course, there's always the financial of everything too, right? As you go and mature and you have a family, you want to be able to provide and do all of those things too. So so you have to be consciously pushing yourself and asking this question as to who I am and what my purpose is, to keep yourself grounded and aligned to the direction.
Yes. So it's basically when you are operating in the human body mode, which is all, this is all we do. So life's problem would always be there. You are always looking to have a better education. You're always looking to have a better home. You're always looking to have more money. You're always looking to have more fame. And you get caught in this fear and greed mode in the human body mode. So until your direction comes from the spiritual mode, you will not be peaceful, you will not be content, you will not be successful.
I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, I had a point to be mentioned here, that when we talk about mirror neurons and walk the talk by parents, I feel that somewhere the operating principles of the family should be defined, keeping children in mind and involving them in this process. Assimilation is the key, I feel, where the family knows that, okay, look, these are the operating principles of the family. So whatever I do, does it fall within that gamut, or is it out of those set of principles? So this was my little input. Maybe Ratanjit ji would elaborate on this.
Yeah, see, if you decided the principle before you knew who you are, the principle would be directed by the human body mode. So what comes first, principle or knowing the truth? Once you know the truth, everything becomes principled. You don't have to write the principle. Whatever you do becomes right.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Right?
There is, we've talked, Ratanjit, about the conscience. And, I think what we talked about that is that's kind of that spirituality inside of us that's kind of lingering, even if we don't know who we are, even if we haven't taken that step to really understand that and live that habit, it's kind of inside of us that is saying that there's more to you than your physical greed, your physical desires and wants. And that conscience that, when we were young, because again, most of us don't even think about it when we're old anymore, but when we were young, it's when we did steal that piece of candy that we knew we shouldn't do. We shouldn't even have that candy, let alone steal it. And yet, so when we did, we didn't enjoy the candy. It was crazy because we thought it was going to be so much fun to eat it. And we know that our mom would be mad at us, and we know that we shouldn't have done that. And so there's something about that situation that just didn't work out the way we wanted it to, and we weren't happy. And it's because of that conscience within us. Okay. So my point is that it seems that even in a human mode, don't we still have kind of a tendency based on our values and principles to try to do the right thing? I mean, we still, greed gets in the way, ego gets in the way. And I think the older we get, money becomes bigger and greed becomes bigger and all those things. But aren't we still designed, even from a human standpoint, with that conscience within us to kind of guide us in the right direction?
Basically, we never realize that we have what we call conscience is really a pseudo conscience. Real conscience only gets nurtured when you are in the spiritual mode. And, many times we use this conscious, I have this conscious, it's knowingly or unknowingly, sometimes you are in the spiritual mode because you are just part of you.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess that's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah. So under that circumstance, the conscious coming out of that mode is the real conscious.
Yeah.
And the conscious which is coming out of in the human body mode is the pseudo-conscious.
Well, we could fake it real easily and use it
Yes.
to fake out ourselves, to fool ourselves that we're really right. And it's in my conscience that says I'm doing this. But we play those games within us all the time. But when the real conscience is there, it's from the spiritual side.
Yes.
I couldn't agree more. Anybody else have any thoughts? Dr. Jack G, haven't had any comments today. No. Maybe he did have to take that call after all. He warned us early he might have to take a call. Might have done that. All right, everybody. We thank you. Now, we will not be live
No, I am
next week.
back.
Oh, you're
Sorry.
back. That's okay. That's all right.
Well, it was an interesting talk. Everything fine, and just a point of view that some of the creatures in this universe, we have a unconscious breathing, but some of have conscious breathing. So that is where it's just like all the whales, all the mammals in the sea, they have a conscious. They have to come after some time to breathe. So how that is another interesting part when we think of nature and spirituality. So we might be, and the other part is definitely if we go to the fundamentals of human being, we are discussing all these parameters in the already existing society. The spirituality is not related anyway to the existing society. What I mean, I might not be very clear. It might be that we are already having a system of education, money, and all. That is all created by us, not by the spirituality. And now we start thinking of good and bad in terms of this type of environment. For us, the education has become now the education which we go to the universities. What happened if we were 100,000 years ago behind, when there was no colleges, no institutions, nothing? Still the spirituality was there. Or five, and at that time, so we have to go back and see the basic characteristics of human being. And if we consider that, then we add the value. We always consider adding the value in terms of commercial, in terms of the economic or other activities. Whereas adding the value in human consciousness, and that has decreased. That is what I feel over a period of time. So
so
the
right.
parameters are different.
See, education is basically a tool. And if you give this tool to a mind which is criminal, he's going to use this tool in harming the society. So before we give the education, we have to change that person into a true human being, a spiritual being. So that has to be done before the age of 5, because your human psyche is formed before that. And at that point, our parents are basically engaged in teaching them ABCD or the worldly things, and they feel proud that their child is able to do that, instead of giving them the real wisdom and giving them the knowledge of who they are. And when they acquire the tool of education, they know how to use it right. So that is what happens all our ill of our society are because these tools are used by the human body mode.
I
Self-
agree with you. I agree with you. But that is where the basic thing lies. But that is the fault of the parents. I will not put it as a fault, but because they are not trained fully for that purpose. And they are not trained because of the society has made them feel like that.
Yeah, the
Our
development of
community, the development of mankind has made them in that form now, that they have come in that type of mode, that everyone is in a body mode and doing it.
yeah.
So,
Yep.
and the competition, the whatever we call it, we can give different
measures of
names to
success.
different processes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
the 5 years are critical, but once those 5 years are over, when they get into the path that civilization has developed, it's anything but spiritual, right? I mean, everything is led towards money and power and success and
Right.
greed, and that's what they're taught. That's what the professors, and no offense to our professors here, but that's the professor mindset too, because that's what they've also learned. So the professors that have that mindset are teaching the kids to develop them the same way, and it just keeps going. So
The human body mode, we created spirituality into religions.
Yeah.
Basically, we divided the human race into different segments. You are better because you are this, and you are worse because
Right.
you are this.
No, unfortunately, the religions have that same goal, that same
Right.
advancement in the
Right.
wrong direction.
So even
Yeah, they are also in greed and other modes.
Yeah,
They
I
are
mean,
also.
yeah, we are more about the rituals that are followed in the religion than
Right,
what the
right.
religion
Yeah.
says you should do or should
Right.
not do.
Right.
Right. No doubt. Oh, we have to figure out how to
Well,
change it.
thank you.
It is very
All right.
difficult.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
This was
Thank you,
very
everyone.